We are recording. Thank you everyone for attending the Prison, the Hidden Sentence book launch. I just am so excited and so happy that you're all here and that we get to be together and share and learn. And really, it's going to be a story about what I've been through. However, I'm just a representative of the millions of people that are affected by having somebody incarcerated. And I might get a little emotional at times because it's really something I haven't spoken about. I've just really started speaking about it, and being vulnerable doesn't come easy to me, and sharing. So whatever happens during this next couple of hours, I think it's going to be informative. I think that it's going to raise awareness. And I think that everybody that participates that's here in this event is going to learn something and walk away with something. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Julia Lazarek, and some of you I've known for quite a long time. Some of you have heard my story. Some of you are hearing it for the very first time. And some of you are new that have found this through social media or other methods that we use to get the word out about the book. So I welcome everybody, and I'm just really glad that everybody's here. I wrote the book because I had experienced having my brother incarcerated for 15 years. And during that time, I didn't speak about it. And so I've invited some long-time friends to join this conversation to talk about the hidden sentence. Because for 15 years, I was serving that hidden sentence. Even though my brother was incarcerated, I was serving the sentence on the outside, because it was really difficult when somebody you love is incarcerated, that it's really hard to enjoy your life, to be happy. However, I've learned that you can have a good life, and that you can still support your loved one. And one of the reasons that I wrote the book was to share this information with everybody, to provide them with information on things that I didn't know. There was a lot of things when my brother was incarcerated that I wasn't aware of, that I wish I knew. And when he was incarcerated, the internet wasn't prevalent back then. So it was really difficult to get information. And it was difficult to talk to people, because even if I had friends that you'll learn about as we go through this, friends that had a family member incarcerated, we didn't speak about it and we didn't tell each other. So it was very, very lonely. And also I was not very present during that time. So once I decided to talk about it, once I found my voice, and we'll be talking about that too, how that happened, I was able to help a lot of people. And I realized that by sharing information, that people that had somebody that was incarcerated wouldn't feel alone. And that I wanted to build a platform where people could go to talk to other people, and also to learn. And for people that haven't been affected by incarceration, people that say, I don't know anybody that's ever been incarcerated, the chances are that you do. Because in the United States, there's over 2 million people in prison, and then over 4 million people that are in jail, on probation, or parole. So there's millions of family members on the outside that are affected, and it also affects their coworkers, it affects society as a whole. And by reading the book, it will also teach people how to talk to other people, to understand, to have compassion for people that are going through this, because it's something that people don't think about. When somebody's incarcerated, they might not be down the street. They might be incarcerated in another state. If they're in a federal prison, they could be anywhere in the United States. And I don't know if everybody knows the difference between a jail and prison, but I wanted to share that with you. A jail is when somebody gets arrested, they're usually taken to a local jail. And if they are convicted and have to serve a sentence, if it's less than a year, they'll usually be sentenced in the jail. But if it's for over a year or longer periods of times, they're going to be sent to a prison. And there's so many things that you need to know that it's not common knowledge. And these are things that I have in the book. And for anybody that hasn't purchased the book, that is interested in the book, you can go to Amazon.com to purchase the book. And the reason that we're having this 3-hour launch is because we want to make Prison the Hidden Sentence a bestseller. Once it becomes a bestseller, it'll have a higher ranking in Amazon and it'll be able to help more people. My goal and my wish for this book is that it helps a lot of people out there so that they don't have to go through what I went through. My brother and I were really close when we were growing up. I was his older sister. And so when he got in trouble, it wasn't something that we knew anybody that was ever incarcerated or in trouble. So it was a real shock to myself and my family. And we didn't know what to do. So we learned, and I learned the hard way. And that's the information that's in the book. The book provides information on what to do when somebody's arrested, what to do when you go to visit them. How do you handle the whole court thing? What is it like seeing your loved one shackled in a uniform and not being able to talk to them? I mean, there's so many things that people don't think about, and especially if they're incarcerated far away, there's an emotional and a financial burden that people don't realize. So there's people, everyday people that you see every day that don't talk about it, that could be affected by this. And by reading this book, you're going to learn how to be able to support them and have more compassion. I want to say that I'm not a lawyer. So whatever we say, whatever you read in the book, it's not legal advice. It's based on my experience and what I've learned during the 15 years that my brother was incarcerated. And it was a tough journey. And I've had a few friends who have read the book and they were like, Julia, we didn't know you were going through this. And of course they didn't, because I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell them. So it was really, really a difficult time. And when I found my voice, I found out that there was just so many people out there that needed somebody to talk to. And that's why I started my podcast, where people could tell their stories. And there's some people on here that actually have told their stories. And I think it really helped them and helped a lot of other people. So what we're going to be doing over the next couple of hours is hearing a little bit about my story, and also learning what it's like to have somebody arrested, somebody incarcerated, going to court. But there's also more. It's like I said earlier, how can you enjoy your life when somebody's sitting in a prison? Well, there's ways and things that you can do to take care of yourself to find the support that you need. And my hope is that this book provides that information to everybody. Somebody had asked me, Julia, he said, what's your goal after the launch? And I had to think about it. I was like, I just wanted to write a book and get it out there to help people. And after I thought about it, after I thought about it, I was like, I want everybody in the United States to read this book, because it's going to help them. It's going to help them understand what it's like. For those that have somebody incarcerated, it's going to help them not feel alone. It's going to see that what they went through or what they're going through, that other people are going through it. It's going to raise awareness to people that haven't been affected. And also it's going to prepare people if, and I hope it doesn't happen, but if a family member is arrested, what do you do and how do you handle it? So that's why I wrote the book, just to help people, to create a platform and to just help people so that they don't have to go through what I did, and to learn from the lessons that I did. We do have an agenda. We are going to be talking to people. Just a little housekeeping, that if you're on Zoom, you can go ahead and put your questions and comments in the chat, and Les will be answering those. So thank you, Les. And for those on Facebook, you can put your comments and questions in the comment section, and Judy will be answering those. And Barbara is going to be the moderator. So as we go through and after we speak to people, she'll be interviewing me so that I can provide information about the book, answer questions. And what you're going to learn here, whether you've read the book or you're going to read the book, is more detail than what's in the book. So you're going to get an inside scoop to what's really going on, things that maybe I didn't put in the book, maybe it was cut out of the book, but whatever it is, you're going to actually be informed, you're going to be surprised, you're going to be aware, and the more people are aware, the more we can do to end mass incarceration. Even though the United States only has 5% of the world population, we have over 20% of the incarcerated population. So I don't know if everybody knows that, or even if you've thought about it. If you've never been affected by incarceration or anybody, why would you even think of that, right? So I want you to have an open mind. I want you to enjoy whatever parts you're going to listen to. I want you to purchase the book for yourself, for a friend, for anybody else, whether they're affected or not. It's going to raise awareness, and it's also going to help so many people. So again, the book is on Amazon.com. And whatever I missed, Barbara, I'm sure will tell us. So I'd like to start by bringing in Keith. And Keith, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, hello.
Hi, Keith.
Hi.
So Keith is somebody that heard my story and was very influential in this book coming to fruition. And I want to pass it over to you. I'm going to put you in the window here.
All right. Hello, hello.
Yeah, it's all yours.
Thank you everyone for being here. I can say that I feel blessed that I was one of the few first people that saw Julia speak and about this subject, and to share her heart and be vulnerable in front of a room full of people, and not only did it touch me and remind me of when my uncle went to prison and what I went through with that story. But what I found interesting was after she spoke, everybody was coming up and I could hear them saying, "Oh, you should write a book, you should write a book." And everybody's telling her, "You should write a book." And I'm sitting back in the background a little bit because I am a best-selling author and a book publisher. So I kind of let everybody else get that out of the way. And then I came up and said, I too think that you should write a book. And not only do I think you should write it, but I would love to support you in any way that I can to get this mission and this message out to the world. So I am blessed to have been part of supporting this beautiful book and this project. And I have to say, like, I'm so incredibly proud of you, Julia, because as I shared with you at the event, and those of you that are watching and listening right now, 8 out of 10 people in the world want to write a book. It's actually 84%, but less than 0.2% will ever achieve it. And so there are a lot of things, a lot of hoops to be jumped through, a lot of things that you have to face, demons when you're writing a book, a lot of hurdles to jump, a lot of appointments that you have to keep with yourself to write. You know, there's so much to it, and I know what it takes to get a book done. And so I'm incredibly proud of you for getting it done. And for those of you who are on now or will see this later, the way that Amazon works is if everybody who's on right now on Facebook on this call goes within this hour and purchases the book, either in Kindle or softcover, which I would suggest getting a copy for you and an extra copy, because you may already know somebody who's going through this, or if you had an extra copy and then someone shared with you that they were going through it, you would have it right there to give them. So if you go within this first hour, or the second hour if you come on later, or the third hour if you come on later, the Amazon it like catches up every few hours. So if we all go and purchase now or within the next few hours, then it's going to hit that bestseller status. We've got enough people, I believe, with all of us and people on Facebook. I know I just shared it on my page to make that happen. That's the goal. So, so let's do that. And I just really felt it important to say, even if to buy an extra copy for someone, because I know that I've been through it.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Yeah, I wanted to go back to the first time you heard me speak. And it was my first time telling the story to an audience. And it was my first time being really vulnerable, and you were there.
yeah,
And it was quite, for me, quite powerful. And I afterwards, the way that it affected people, it made me realize I had to tell the story. I had to be a spokesperson. I had to raise awareness. And,
yeah,
and
yeah. It was amazing to witness.
yeah, and now I can well, I still get a little nervous, right? Because being vulnerable is not easy. However, I just really appreciate it, and you were there, and you encouraged me to write the book. I don't think I would have done it without you.
Oh, thank you. I'm just proud to have been a part of it. Um, and good on you, because you're in the top 2%. And that's another thing that I forgot to share with everybody uh, is that so few people finish a book, and then the next piece is the bestseller piece. Uh, some people can write a book, but they don't always get the bestseller status. So this is a great strategy for that. So we can all make that happen. And if you haven't already invited somebody, go to Facebook and share on your page, or do whatever you can do to get more people on this call as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is just the beginning. We've got a lot more things in store, but I just really appreciated you. And if anybody wants to write a book, uh, Keith, you could put your information in the chat if it's not there already. I'm not monitoring the chat, and I did want to just call out to Les. Was there any questions in the chat or anything for Keith?
Yeah, feel free to type something in there if you have a question for me.
I guess not. Judy? Nothing? Okay. Okay. So whoever's on, if you have any questions for anything we're talking about, just go ahead and put it in the chat or the comments. And Keith, thank you. Thank you for taking your time to speak with us and coming on and being the first person and showing everybody how it happened. It
You're
was just a
welcome.
matter of speaking.
It's my pleasure, and I wish I had this book when my uncle went to prison. I found out by it was on the news. That's how I found out that he was going to jail. I hadn't heard anything about it, and then I see it on the news. And then when he went in jail to prison, everybody disowned him. Like everybody, his own family, everybody turned on him, and I literally was the only person that didn't. And so we wrote letters back and forth for years. And he was just touched and blown away that he actually had somebody to connect with, that somebody still loved him and didn't turn their back on him. But it sure would have helped to have this book at that time.
And what people don't realize is that people that are incarcerated, they're going to be coming out. They're going to be coming to your hometowns, right? So it's in our best interest to keep them healthy, to keep the family on the outside healthy, to keep the communication. So when they do come out, that they do have the support that they need, and it does reduce recidivism. So I commend you for having that conversation with them. And sometimes people might be afraid to write to somebody in prison. However, it really is helpful.
And Mara and I, even after we had written our relationship book, we actually went into a prison where there were people that were either about to get out or they were at the end. You know what I mean? It was like that place. And we went and did a relationship workshop. And it was so amazing, because you want to talk about a group of people that was just all in for the process. It was amazing. And so many people that come up that were just afterwards that were just about to get out, saying, "Oh my God, thank you. Now I have tools. I feel like I'll be able to communicate with my wife when I get out." And I really didn't know what to say before you guys got here. So that was amazing as well. And hearing the things that they shared in that workshop just was huge insight into the process, what they go through.
And there's that part where you're preparing the returning citizen, but then the other part is preparing the family. And so I'm going to say it out loud. That's probably going to be my next book, is the prison family, and providing support and information for the family to prepare for somebody coming out, because it's not the same person. And also for preparing how other people are going to act towards you, because you think you have a neighbor and their son or daughter or husband, wife is coming home from prison. And I think a lot of people will, avoid them. So that's another thing. This book opens awareness, so you won't be so afraid. They're people. We're humanizing everybody. Everybody is human.
Yes. Well, thank you for being the mouthpiece for that.
I didn't choose it. I guess I did choose it, but it just felt like something I had to do, right? I just had to do it. And that's why I'm here. Yeah. So, well, thank you.
Got it. Blessings.
And we'll just move on. And like I said, if anybody has any questions as we go along, just put them in the chat. And
I waited, and I'm going to go buy my copy now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Keith.
I wanted to do it within this first hour.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. Amazon.com. So I will go ahead. You're muted, and let me put me back up there. So hi, everybody. And again, thank you, Keith. That's how it all started, guys. We're going to go through this process. So you're going to see really what happened, and we're going to learn a lot. And I asked my long-term friend Lisa to come join us. And Lisa and I met many years ago when I thought I wanted to be a meeting planner, but then I decided that I didn't want to work nights and weekends. But we formed a friendship, and she also knew my brother. My brother needed a place to stay because he was moving to where she lived, and she opened her house to him to be a roommate and got to know him. And Lisa, welcome, and thank you for joining. It means so much to me. And I thought you could start with, what I wanted to do was let you guys know who my brother was, right? What I didn't tell you is that my brother had a life sentence. And when you think of that, it had to be a terrible crime. And we'll talk about that later. And he actually passed. He got hepatitis C while he was incarcerated. And it was really tough. We'll talk more about that too. But I just kind of want to give you an overview. So through all that, Lisa was my friend, but also I didn't talk about it a lot. And so she'll shed some light on that. But could you talk about Bo, my brother, and what it was like, what he was like, and share a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jules. And first, want to welcome everybody and talk a little bit about how I met you first. Let's go back to the days that you wanted to be a meeting planner, and I was just newly divorced and was propelling my career. And I went to my first industry organizational meeting, and we had one of those corny icebreakers, and we've all had those, right? And in this corny icebreaker is where I met Julia. And this one I will never forget. We had to introduce ourselves using an adjective of the first letter of our first name. So here it goes. Hi, I'm lovely Lisa. And hi, I'm joyful Julia. And I will never forget her ear-to-ear smile and her playful laugh. And it was just somebody that you were drawn to, and we were instant friends and friends ever since. This was the early 90s, so we've been friends for
Long time.
30 years. So she was just what I needed at the time. As I said, I was newly divorced, and that friendship meant a lot to me. I needed a roommate. And so she said Bo was moving to Orlando, and she recommended him, and he was just what I needed. I had stipulations though. I'm a clean freak, so I said he needs to be clean, and I don't mow the lawn. He needs to mow the lawn. She said, okay, and she said Bo will be perfect. So it turned out he was wonderful. He was very considerate. He was very helpful. He was just not only considerate and helpful around the house, he was just that way as a person. He always just made me smile. He was very clean, as I said, that was very important, but he was also a very responsible person. He paid the bills on time, he mowed the lawn without hesitation, and I think that he did it almost proudly because he knew how much that meant to me, and he knew that made me happy. He was really, the perfect roommate to me. When I think of him, it makes me smile. I never told you that, Julia, but really it makes me smile because he always had a smile on his face. So when I picture him, that's how I picture him, is with a smile on his face. He'd come home and he'd be smiling. It's like he was happy to be home, happy to see me. And when I would come home, that's what he would do. He would be smiling. That's my mental picture. In retrospect, I would like to think that him being there in the home and made him happy, and at least that's what we had a happy place for him. At least that's what I'd like to think. We had parties, as you know. We were known for having humongous Halloween parties. So something that he looked forward to. He looked forward to helping me out with that, and he enjoyed having the people. I have an actual photograph that I had come across, and it was him in this Dracula costume, and of course he was smiling. But he, he wasn't outgoing like you and I, but he was rather reserved, but he did make friends, and he was, easygoing, and he did enjoy being around people, but he just, kept to himself for the most time. But he also saw me at my worst. Funny thing is, I would be working out. It was the early 90s. We had VHS videotapes, and I'd be working out in the living room, and he would come home, and I usually worked out when my roommates were not there, but if he came home early or something, there I was in my early 90s, remember. I had my neon workout gear, and I'd be working out and be so embarrassed that I would be caught in this workout stuff, and but he would just chuckle and go to the room and knew not to come out until I was done working out. But no, he was just a wonderful person and a wonderful roommate. But yeah, when I found out, when you told me what had happened, I was absolutely shocked. There was no way that this wonderful person that I knew, somebody that paid the bills on time, somebody that was always smiling, so helpful, so considerate, would be incarcerated. How can that be? That was absolutely impossible. It just couldn't have been. So I was very, very, very shocked.
Yeah, it was after I bought my house is when he moved out, right? And so he came and he lived with me. And I don't think I told you right away that he wasn't, when he got arrested. I don't think I shared that with you. I think it was after he was convicted that I told you.
Yeah, he had moved out and I was bummed. I lost my good roommate. Yeah, it was a while, and it was a while that you had told me. And again, I was just really very shocked. And I was very inquisitive with you. I was, I had so many questions, but as you said earlier, you weren't opening up about it and you weren't really talking about it. And I didn't understand that, actually. I thought that, you were pretty open. We talked about many things and you were always pretty much an open book, so to speak. And in this case, you weren't, and I didn't understand that. And it wasn't until I read your book that I really understood it. And that was good for me as as Keith talked about, it's good for a lot of people, and the book is good for a lot of people, and it's good for many people to understand what people are going through. And that was a good read for me as well, to understand what you were going through.
And you thought, I mean, in all the years of our friendship, right? I barely spoke about it, or if you did ask me, I might say something topical. But you thought that was kind of odd.
Very odd. Yeah, and I didn't take it personally, but I just thought it was very odd that you weren't able to talk to me. And then I would, maybe if I took it personally, it's like, how can I help her? But I didn't know how to help you. So again, this book was helpful to me to understand that maybe there's only so much I can do, or how can I help you with that? So I think that, as Keith pointed out, that, it's good to have that book on hand for other people to have, to be able to relate to somebody that's going through this.
And that's why I call it the hidden sentence, because I didn't realize till I started speaking about it that I was serving the sentence with my brother, and part of it was not speaking about it. And that's another reason for the book, is because people need to be able to speak about it and not be stigmatized. And it's not that I even thought that you would think differently of me, or that I would feel stigmatized. It was just so mind-boggling and unbelievable, and I was so hurt and in so much pain, I didn't know how to talk about it. So it wasn't anything. I know that you were there for me, but somebody that's going through it, they don't talk about it.
Well, it's almost like an open wound. I've not gone through it, but I would imagine it's almost like an open wound. And the more that you talk about it, it's open, as opposed to just shutting it away. It feels perhaps easier. Again, I don't know, but that's perhaps what I got out of it.
Well, I just appreciate you, and I appreciate all your support, and I know you were there for me over the years. I just, if I had spoken about it, I would have received the compassion that I needed, but I didn't know how to speak about it. And that's what another reason for this book is, so that people know that they can speak about it, get the compassion and the support that they need, because I didn't have it. And again, even though we're talking about my story, it's really representative of millions of other people in the United States that are going through this. So I just want to keep that open, that yes, this is my story, my brother's story, but it's really happening all over. So just raising awareness.
No, absolutely. I can see why you wrote the book, and I'm certainly proud of you, and I can definitely see how this will help so many people. And
we're going to talk later on about when my brother passed, when he was in prison, and what we had to do and what we learned. And Lisa was one of the people. There's other people on the call too, that you'll meet, that was there for me when that all happened. So I think for me, after my brother passed, and I told people, I realized that I was getting a lot of compassion, and people understood that, because that was something people had been through. However, incarceration isn't something that people are used to. So we need to make that something that people can talk about it, and that people can have empathy and compassion for people going through it, and provide them with the support and not stigmatize them. So I just wanted to bring that out. We don't have a script here, so it's like really whatever comes out, comes out. So we're going to learn some things. But Lisa, thank you. Is there anything else that you could think of about Bo that you want to say, or anything you've learned from the book?
No, I just really appreciate you writing this, because it was, in looking back, I learned what you were going through, and I'm sorry that you had to go through it and go through it alone at the time, and I wish I was able to help you, but I'm so proud of you, and proud of where you're at now, and I'm sure Bo's proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't think there's anything more you could have done, because I did it to myself. I was in a self-imposed prison. And even though I was living life, and I've been pretty successful, right? Just going through the motions, but you don't know you don't know what anybody else has been through. Everybody's walking around with something, and that just happened to be what I was walking around with. So I thank you. I just really appreciate you.
Happy to be here, joyful Julia.
Thank you, lovely Lisa. Does anybody have any questions and anything come up before we move on?
There's a couple questions.
Okay.
What was I going to say? Is there any significance of the logo? Was one.
Thank you.
And another one, if you could touch on, and I mentioned that you're going to let them know what's gone on with your brother since. And the other one would be, I'm just scrolling up here real quick. How old were you when this took place? And if you think birth order had any impact?
So
Interesting.
Julia, I've been sending my questions in through the chat so you can answer them all together with Barbara.
I'm just hearing that you guys aren't seeing my questions.
Oh no, I just thought there might be some questions for Lisa before I introduce Barbara.
Okay.
So I'll just go ahead and tell you about the logo, and then yeah, we'll pass it on to Barbara, so she can handle that part. She does that so well. So the logo, if I move out of the way here, the heart is the love we have for our loved one that's incarcerated, and the hands are us joining together. So it's those on the outside and those on the inside. The bars, of course, represent prison, incarceration, and the rising sun represents hope. Hope that someday we can all be together again, that our loved ones will be healthy, that they'll come out and can lead a successful life on the outside after being incarcerated. So thank you for that. So thank you, Lisa and Barbara. Let me introduce Barbara. She's a very good friend who has graciously accepted helping with this event, and she is going to be the moderator. Any questions that were out there, I kind of jumped the gun. We did have a little agenda. So Barbara, are you out there?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you so much for writing this really spectacular book. It's not something I would have guessed I would be so moved by, but nor did I guess I would have felt so strongly that I wish I would have had this book sooner. I too have had someone in my family incarcerated, and just going through it alone, because as Julia mentioned, it is something that people don't often talk about, or if they do talk about it, they speak of it in shame. And so it doesn't necessarily invite the kind of sharing that another life event might have. So this book has really such practical information available in it that I think virtually everyone would benefit from reading it. It's a quick read. It's available on Amazon right now, and I saw Keith just purchased his copy. Thanks, Keith. And this book is now number 9 in hot new releases.
Wow.
So there you go. Yeah, just look it up on Amazon under Prison: The Hidden Sentence, Criminal Procedure Law. Yeah. So congratulations, Julia.
We're gonna shoot up to number 1.
It's a nicely written book, if I do say so myself. It's a really great book. So again, anyone who's joining us now, if you are on Zoom, you can go to the chat box and you can ask any questions that you like. We have had quite a few questions already that we're going to get to. And anybody who's on Facebook, if you just go to your comments, then they'll be fed into the chat box, which is what I have available to me right now. So there have been some questions. And before I do get into the questions, I just want to go back just really quickly and thank Keith for sharing such useful information on the book and the process of publishing a book and how to become a bestseller on Amazon. That was really enlightening. Thank you so much, Keith. And then I would very much like to thank Lisa for sharing her very personal stories of her memories of Bo. So some of the people who have been listening have taken the moment and written some questions into the chat, and I'd like to get to that first. Now, you did cover how old you were, but would you like to talk a little bit more about where you were in life at that time? You know, career-wise, school, whatever you were going through.
Oh, good point. Yeah, I was 36 at the time, and I was in my career very successful. I had just bought my first house, and I was working for a company. Believe it or not, I was working on law enforcement software, and I actually spent time in the booking rooms because our software was booking software. So when somebody got processed, they'd enter the information into that system. And I also worked with detectives because the software also did lineups for the detectives. So even though I was in that circle, I didn't speak about it. I was afraid. I don't even think you knew that. So this wasn't planned. But yeah, I was working for a corporation that had criminal justice software, and I didn't even talk to the officers or anybody about it because I was afraid to talk to them. I didn't know. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. It's kind of like I froze, right?
Yeah.
I was 36 at the time, and my brother was 4 years younger than me. So like I said, he was my younger brother who I was responsible for my whole life. And when he got arrested, it was like there was nothing I could do as a sister or even somebody that's a parent, that when somebody's arrested, you don't have any rights. It's like you can't take care of them. All you can do is support them and learn. And there's some steps in the book about what to do when somebody's arrested. And the first thing I'd say is call an attorney. Number one, whether you can afford it or not, you can get free legal advice. And I don't know if there's any attorneys on here, but I think there are. But you can basically call, and the first call is usually free, and they can give you some good direction on what you can do.
That's very good practical advice. And that's the kind of information that I really appreciated in the book, because in the book, you know, if you were to get that call from a loved one from jail, would you know what to do, who to turn to?
No.
Would you have a lawyer already? Or a bail bondsman? I mean, no. So you got that call, Julia, and tell me how that affected you.
Yeah, our situation was a little different because he did get an attorney right away once he found out that he was going to be arrested. So it wasn't a call because there was an investigation. And when he found out that there was an investigation, he hired an attorney. So the attorney negotiated with a date that he could turn himself in. So that's another aspect of it, that when somebody turns themselves in, that you need to drive them there and drop them off. And that's really difficult. There's a story in there. I don't know if it's in my podcast or in the book. I don't remember if we put it in, but a woman drove her son to the jail. He was sentenced to 10 years. And then they found out later that if he didn't take a plea, that he would have been able to fight it with DNA. So, you know, it's just difficult whether you get that call in the middle of the night what do you do? Like you said, and in the book, there's a whole list of things you can do. You can call the jail and get as much information as possible. You can find out what the charges are. You can call an attorney. You, if your loved one is going to be in there for overnight, you know, can you visit? So you need to find out if there's an application, right, that you fill out so that you can be approved to go visit. Also, if they're going to be there, they can't call you after that first call. So can you put money on their account? And those are things that you can do right away when you get that call and you're talking to the officer. If you're talking to your loved one, there's things that you can do right away to get set up so that your loved one will not be sitting there without being able to call you, without maybe getting basic needs if they're going to be in there for more than a couple days. And then also what comes up a lot is if a loved one has medical needs, that once somebody's arrested, they should be seeing somebody in the jail. It's different times, I think it's within 16 hours now or so, where they need to see somebody if they need medication, that it can be prescribed. So you want to make sure that if your loved one is arrested, if they need medication, if they have a mental condition, that the jail is aware of it. Because the worst thing that could happen is, let's say that your loved one has a mental condition, maybe they're schizophrenic, say, and they have an episode. Well, if the officers don't know that this is a condition, they'll put them in solitary. So the worst thing you can do with somebody that has a mental condition is put them in a room by themselves, right? So it's really important that you do call, that you can call. People don't realize that. You have every right. You can call, speak to somebody, ask as many questions, get the information, find out if they're going to get the medical support that they need, if you can visit them, what you need to fill out, can you put money on their account? And these are things you could do right away.
That's great. So the initial, when you initially found out, you didn't necessarily know all of these things, and you were basically just kind of picking it up on the fly, as they say. How did you actually find out all these facts?
It was actually when my brother was incarcerated through him. He sent me information. When after somebody's not arrested, but once they go through the court system and they're convicted and they're sentenced, they go through a processing facility. And during that processing, they're provided with all the information that they need, and then they can provide it to their loved ones. So I got all the information from him, because remember, the internet wasn't prevalent back then. Now you can actually go online to the facility and get all the information that you need. Mostly every facility has a website that has this information. And here in Nevada, we have a family services department that you can call, and they can provide information for the prison. Okay, we're talking about the prison, not the jail. So basically, I got all the information from him, and it was sitting and waiting.
So tell us, kind of go through the timeline a little, if you don't mind. Let us in on, so there was an investigation, and you became aware of the possibility, and then you drove him down, and he was incarcerated. And how long did it take you to get all of this information and put it all into practical use?
Yeah, there's several things that take place. So when he went to jail, that was the booking. And then it wasn't until about 9 months later that we went to trial. So during that time that he was living with me, and then he did move out during that time. It was, we were in fear, we were in shame. We didn't know if it was going to be on the news, right? Is this something that's going to be on the news? Is everybody going to know about this? Is it, we didn't know what was going to happen. We were scared. We had shame, and we were ignorant, and we didn't know what to do. And he had an attorney initially, and the attorney told us not to talk to anybody. And investigators would come to the door and try to talk to us to get information. And we were told not to talk to them. So I remember one time just like closing the door on somebody. And I was like, I was so scared because I didn't know what was going to happen. And
When you talk about we, you're referring to yourself and your parents. Could you talk a little bit about their reaction to this initially?
Yeah, well, it was mostly me and my brother because we didn't know the extent of it, and we didn't want to worry our parents. So we pretty much, he was living with me, and we didn't know the extent of it. We didn't know how serious it was. So we just handled it ourselves. That's how we did it growing up, right? It was me and him against the world. So we handled that. And then when he went to court, my parents came to court, and it was probably the worst day of my life, sitting there in the courtroom. And it was just horrible.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity once again to thank you so much for sharing this experience with all of us. Many of the people who are tuning in have also had similar experiences, and I'm sure it's probably quite difficult to verbalize the experience and the emotions that you felt. So I'd like to take this moment to thank you, Julia, for sharing this with us, for writing this really, really wonderful and helpful book. There are a number of people who are joining in the chat that have purchased the book. I'd like to also encourage anyone who has purchased the book to go back and review it too, because that's very helpful with the Amazon app. So thank you, Pauline, for buying a book. And I know Kathy purchased a book earlier, so thank you very much for doing all of that. You just talked about how it was always you and your brother. You were the big sister. Talk a little bit more about that and his expectations and your expectations.
Well, growing up, our mother was from another country, so it was her English wasn't the best. So I helped her a lot, right, understanding English. And there was things that she didn't understand, right, in America, coming from another country. So it was explaining things to her and taking care of my brother and explaining things to her on things that she didn't understand about growing up in the United States. And my brother and I would we cook together. We liked. There used to be a delivery of these lobster tails, right? This truck would come by, and so we would make the lobster tails. He was a really good cook, and that was like a real treat for us. I could when we had the house together, when he was my roommate, instead of going to my parents for Thanksgiving, they would come to our house, and so we prepared meals. And one time we went rollerblading before my parents came, and he broke his leg. So in the morning, we went rollerblading. We made it to the emergency room. They casted him up, made it home, and he just like rested, and we had a successful Thanksgiving dinner. When we were younger, we liked to ride horses. We both went to riding camp, and that was really, really fun. Just climbing trees together, sledding, the things kids do. And I always watched out for him, right? When we go sledding in the winter, in the fall, we climb trees. We would, play games. When he was really little, he had the matchbox, I don't know what it's called now, but the matchbox track.
The tracks.
Yeah. So we used to play with the matchbox cars and race. We had a basement, and we had a pool table. So we would, and we had a ping pong table. So we'd play pool and ping pong, and we'd have people over. So we were pretty social and just had a lot of fun together.
I think that one of the things that struck me, and I think that is very powerful about the book, is how relatable your childhood was, that it was a happy childhood, and it was a childhood probably not the type that people expect an incarcerated person to have experienced. I think we have some preconceived ideas about incarcerated people sometimes. And with the numbers that you just gave us earlier, those preconceived ideas are probably not applicable in a large number of cases. And certainly in your brother's case, that was not the case, that he had a happy, supportive family life. And could you talk just a little bit more about that? And also, as you as a sister, the relation that you had with your brother and his expectation of you during that time.
Well, I think he looked up to me, as his older sister. So I always, was there to answer anything or help with anything. I just was always there.
So just to give an overview of the book, because I don't know that we've actually gone through how the book is laid out. It does start out by giving us a really great portrait of your family and who Bo was and your relationship with your brother. And then the majority of the book does deal with this whole period of time of him being investigated into the incarceration and then afterwards. Give us a little overview on how you decided to format the book.
Well, I looked at what I learned, and the process that took place. So it starts with the arrest, right? You get that call in the middle of the night, that your loved one's been arrested, or you see it on the news, or you find out that they're being investigated and they have to turn themselves in. So there's different ways that people are arrested. So I wanted to bring all those to light and inform people of what can happen because you don't expect it. And then also a recap of everything, of things that I've learned that I wanted to share. And after the arrest, if you have to go to court, court is a really painful experience. Like I said earlier, seeing your loved one in shackles, and when they're in there, when they're before the judge, you can't speak to them, you can't see them, and if they're found guilty, they're taken away right then and there. So we'll talk about later about things you can do to prepare, but it just was really, really painful. And then visiting. When somebody's arrested, they're taken to a processing facility, and you might not be able to see them for months. You have to fill out an application, and we'll talk about some things about the application later. But and it has to be approved. So that, there's some people that are waiting months and months to see their loved one. And then when they're assigned a facility, it might not be near you. So you have to make arrangements. You might need to take vacation. You might, from work. If it's far away, you've got a budget to travel. What if you have children? Do you take the children with you? If you have animals, who's going to watch the animals? And, who do you tell? So the whole incarceration and what you need to know for visitation, there's a whole section on things that you need to know, and you can call the facility, but it's from things that you can wear, things that you can bring, if you're on medication, what is it like, just all these things that I wanted people to know about visiting during incarceration. And then also there's a section on what to do if somebody's ill. What happens if somebody passes away in prison?
Yes, that's very helpful.
And then also there's a section on, what you can do to take care of yourself. a healthier you is healthier for the person that's incarcerated too, because like I said earlier, that person's coming home. So you need to keep yourself healthy.
Thank you. Yes. You know, I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said how frightening the trial was for you. Explain a little bit more about that experience so that people can kind of get an idea of what to expect if they are also called upon to go to the trial of one of their loved ones.
Well, just looking back, before I get into the actual trial, is it's really important to get letters to show character. Our attorney didn't do that. He ended up with a public defender at the end because he lost his job, and we just couldn't afford an attorney. So a public defender was assigned to him. And yeah, so there's things now looking back that we probably could have done that we didn't know about. But once you get into the court, and especially if the offense is against somebody else, another family, say, you're sitting in the courtroom with people that are looking at you like you committed the crime. So here you have your shame, you've got your guilt. Is there anything I could have done? Is there anything I could have done differently? And then you have the jurors, you have if it's a trial, you know, you have other people in the courtroom, and they're all looking at you like you did something wrong. And so you have this shame, this guilt, just like, what could you do? And you're like, I didn't do anything wrong. You know, whatever my brother was convicted of is something he did, but he's still a human being, right? So it was just so horrible sitting there, and they picked a jury. He decided to go with the jury. He didn't want to take a plea deal. And hearing the questions and hearing the prosecutor, you know, asking the questions to the jurors, and then they pick their jury, and then hearing the story and the testimony, and you just get like this pit in your stomach. And even though your loved one says that they're innocent, you start to wonder, and then you're like, did they do it? You know, and until the day he died, he said he was innocent. So we'll never know, but you just don't know. And that feeling in your stomach. And then when they ask him to stand to give him his verdict, and then the attorney told us that if the jury came back, you know, rather quickly, that it looked good. And they did come back rather quickly, so we had hope. So you're sitting there and you have hope, and you've got a pit in your stomach, and you're scared because you don't know what's going to happen. And then you just find out that if he's found guilty, it's a life sentence, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then the judge reads the verdict, and it's guilty. And you're just like in shock. You know, what? You're taking my brother away for life? It was just unbelievable. And then right then and there, they take them away, and they're a ward of the state, and you don't get to see them. You can't talk to them or anything before they go. And if you don't have everything in order before that happens, then there's a lot of things you don't have access to. So that's why it's important for people to know that if that does happen, what you can do to prepare. Because once they're gone, you know, where did they live? You know, what if they have finances? What if they have a vehicle? What if they have children? What if there's animals? What if, you know, everything. They're no longer a citizen. They're a ward of the state or the court.
Yeah. Yes. You've done a very nice job of painting a picture of how frightening that must have been for you, because sitting here listening to you, it was frightening for me to hear, to imagine that happening to someone that I might care about. It's a frightening thought.
That's why the book's so important. And I don't know if there's any questions. The first person that I went to see was Terry, and I wanted to have her shine some light on it. But were there any questions that we need to answer before we go to Terry?
You know, one of the things that you mentioned was about your brother's job loss. That was sort of surprising that his employer at the very time when he needed revenue for his defense, he did lose his job. I'm sure that's something that is not an uncommon thing, but sort of surprising for me to
Yeah.
hear.
And if you don't have family, what do? You tell your employer you have to go to court, right? You need to take time off work. And yeah, he lost his job.
Another thing that you mentioned that I want to make sure that anybody who's listening has the advantage of hearing this practical bit of information that's in your book. And this is an indication of just how practical and useful this book is. Your brother wore glasses, and you needed to make sure that he had his glasses with him at the trial.
Well, actually, he didn't have his glasses. That's what I learned, and that's why I emphasize it. If somebody wears glasses, I didn't have to wear glasses till recently. I've got my contacts on now, but and when I don't have my glasses or my contacts in, I'm just like, oh my gosh, how did he even, survive? Because what do you do when you're in prison? You read. If you don't have your glasses, you can't read. So if you don't go to the trial with your glasses, if you're arrested without your glasses, you don't get glasses. It took him a while to be able to find some glasses to purchase when he was incarcerated. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
So we do have some other questions, but they can certainly wait until later. So why don't we go ahead with the agenda and we can return to some of these questions later.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to bring Terry on. And Terry, are you out there?
I'm here.
All right. There she is. Look at that. You got the book. So, thank you so much. I wanted to bring Terry on because Terry's another longtime friend, and we worked together. And she was somebody that I spoke to, and she is to me the epitome of a compassionate person. I talk about her, and when I go out and speak about compassion, and what I wanted to bring her in here for is to, talk about kind of just how messed up I was. She can tell some stories because after the verdict, I called Terry and at our place of work, and she came outside and she spoke with me. And Terry, I don't know if you where you want to start, if you want to start there or earlier.
Sure. So Julia and I met when we both started working at this company, and we became really good friends and spent a lot of time together. And so I had no idea that any of this was going on. And then one day she called when I was at work, and she had been off that day. That's all I knew, was she was off. And she called and she said, can you talk? And I said, sure, I can talk. And she said, can you meet me outside? So I said, okay. So I went out to the parking lot, and I could tell that she was, definitely distraught. And I said, what's the matter? And so she started telling me what had happened with her brother, and that she had just come from court and that they had found him guilty. And so I immediately went back inside and told my boss that I needed to leave for the day, and went back out and sat with her in the parking lot. We sat there for several hours and just talked. And I just let her say whatever it was that she needed to talk about, whether it be the verdict or the history of what happened, or what to do, or being confused and not knowing what to do next. I just let her talk. And so after that, shortly after that, Julia decided that she wanted to go see him they had him in the Orlando prison, the downtown one. She wanted to go see him, and she asked me if I would go with her. So I said, sure. So we went, and it was nothing like I expected. I don't think it was anything like Julia had expected either. It was, you went inside the building. They you know, checked you to make sure you had no weapons or anything on you. Then you waited for a jail person to come down and get you. You get in this elevator, and it's this tight, cramped little elevator, and you go up to like the 13th floor, and the elevator opens up, and there is this tiny little room that you could probably fit 5 to 10 people in at most. And you all have to stand there in that little room and wait. And on the other side are these, you know, you see on TV, there's these, you know, tables and a glass in between, and the one person's on one side and one person's on the other side. And so that was there. And they said, you know, you'll have to wait, and you can go back there if you want to. And I thought, I don't know that I can do this. You know, I'm very claustrophobic. So I said to Julia, I'm going to wait for you downstairs. You go and visit with your brother. I'm going to wait for you downstairs. So I went out and I sat on the front steps. And while I was sitting on the front steps, I could hear these people talking. And I thought, who are these people that I hear talking? And it was the prisoners upstairs. There was no air conditioning in that room. It was horrible conditions, but the only air that they had was these windows, and the windows were continually open, and there were just concrete slats in between. So I could hear the conversations that the prisoners were having with each other up there and talking about how hot it was. And if you've ever been to Orlando in the summertime, you know it's incredibly hot. And then to be in the upper floors of a building with no air conditioning on is really bad. So anyway, her brother was there, and she visited with him, and then came down, and we sat and talked for a long time again, and just, you know, kind of, again, just let her talk, let her say whatever it was she needed to say. Then when Julia decided to move to Las Vegas, she would periodically call me and say, you know, hey, I'm coming to Orlando because I want to go see Bo. Do you mind if I stay with you? And I'd always say, no, it's fine. You're absolutely welcome to come stay with us. And so she would. And this one time, she came to the door.
I was so messed up.
I had colored my hair red. And normally it's kind of a blonde color, but I had colored my hair red. She came to the door. I went to the door and opened it up, and she went, hi, I'm Julia. Is Terry here? And I just kind of looked at her and went, Julia, it's me. She said, oh, you know, it was just like, she was not really with it at the time. And oftentimes when she would come, and she came many, many times, and she would always stay at my house, And that I thought was important for her, because she needed a safe place to land. She needed someplace that would be a respite for her, that she knew if she wanted to cry, if she wanted to talk, whatever she needed, she could get that there. And it was a place that she could feel safe. And she always needed that to have, and everybody needs that, especially when you're going through a traumatic situation like this. You need a place that's safe, that you can land, that you know that you can be your most vulnerable, and nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to, you know, kick you out. Nobody's going to give you a hard time. Nobody's going to reject you for that, because everything that happened wasn't Julia's fault. Nothing that happened was a direct result of anything that Julia said, or anything that Julia did. She was a victim of the circumstances. So she would come and she would stay at my house, and, you know, we would always be real happy to see each other. And then we would sit up late and talk, and she would talk about her brother. She would talk about what happened. She would talk about, you know, what she was trying to accomplish and all of that. And then she would get up the next morning and she would go visit her brother. And when she would come back, she would be a completely different person. She would just, it was like she couldn't wait to leave. And I could tell that it wasn't that she didn't want to be around me. It wasn't that she didn't want to be around her brother. It was that she was feeling such intense pain in her heart because of having to see her brother in that situation. And I knew that that was what was happening with her. And so, you know, I never said, you know, no, Julia, stay, you know, or whatever. I just was always like, whatever you need, it's fine. So, yeah, we did that up until the year that her brother passed away. And I mean, we've been friends all these years, and she still can call me at any particular time, and doesn't matter. We'll talk, whatever she needs.
No, I appreciate it. It was just always such a warm place. I was so fortunate to have a couple places that I could stay when I go visit, and I just wanted to bring out the financial burden to travel too, which people don't think about. But
Right.
I was very fortunate, and really, what Terry brought out was I was just not present in my life for like 15 years. I was just going through the motions, and I think it's important to find a safe place. And Terry was one of those places that I could go. Terry was just this awesome cook. She'd just make all this comfort food. You just go there and you'd have like some good comfort food, and there was always family around, and it was just a really warm place. So I think that because of our relationship and because Terry was so compassionate and the first person that I spoke to, I feel like I did lean on her when I did come out. And so other people on the line might be like, well, she didn't speak about it with us. And I think it was just that maybe you just find a safe person to talk to. And looking back, I could have been talking to all of my good friends that are on the line here, but I didn't know how. And I just appreciated being able to have that support. And in the book, I do talk about that, having that support, finding safe people to talk to. And I mean, Terry and I, we worked together. We were together like, I think more than we were with our significant others.
True.
So let me.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, I'm going to mute you. Okay. And then Terry, are you still unmuted?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. We were together probably more than we were with our families because we spent an awful lot of time together.
Yeah,
But it was good. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was just so nice, and Terry had such a warm home, and yeah, I just think it's important for people to know, you know, what you said, especially about how I was just a skeleton of myself, even though I was going through the motions. So there could be people around you that are going through it that haven't spoken about it. But if they find somebody like Terry that's compassionate and just listens, and you know, that's really important, and that really helps. It didn't help me be more present, but I still did manage to get through life at that time, and I did have a safe place to go. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Terry.
Sure.
Was there any questions for Terry before I pass it back to Barbara? Oh. None, Barbara. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia.
Terry,
And
thank you so much. I just want to thank Terry. I really appreciate you, and thank you for coming on and sharing and shedding light on the real things that happen when somebody's going through it. And again, it's not just me. This is happening to millions of people across the United States that are in the same state, and they might not have the support that you know, that I did have, even though I didn't lean on all my support.
Yep,
Thanks.
absolutely. You're welcome, hon. I'll talk with you later.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for really underlining how important good friends can be. So Julia, we've heard from a few of your really good friends. Of course, the support and help of Keith was really great. And then during that time period of yours, you were really fortunate to have friends like Lisa and like Terry. One of the questions that came in was how did this what did this teach you about yourself during this whole process?
What did it teach me about myself? I was numb. I was not present. I was not taking care of myself. So I think what it taught me was that what I know now is to ask more questions, to be more present, to reach for support, to find safe people, and to get the information that you need and not feel like a victim. I felt like a victim, and I lived that life. So I think that's what I learned. I just and it took my brother's passing for me to really wake up and look back and see what I had been doing. So that was a real, it was horrible, but it opened my eyes to how I had been living my life and how I could have even been more compassionate at him. Because when somebody's incarcerated, you have all these feelings, and it's normal. You feel sad, but you're mad, you're angry, you're guilty, you're all these feelings, and part of it is you're mad at them for being there, right? And so dealing with all that, and I don't think I dealt with a lot of it until after he passed. But I was always there for him. I mean, I felt like I did the best that I could with what I knew at the time.
Yes. And you're doing even more now by sharing your experience and writing this great book. To those of you who are joining us now, we're talking to Julia Lazarick. She's the author of Prison, The Hidden Sentence. And we've heard from a number of people who've been a support system for Julia through these years of her brother's trial and incarceration and the years since his passing. And if you have had an experience of somebody in your family or someone that you care for being incarcerated, you probably can certainly relate to a lot of the things that Julia is talking about. However, if you've never had this experience, I do recommend picking up this book. It's a quick read. It's a very easy read, very well written, and full of very useful information. Even those of you who are currently experiencing the amount of the experience of a loved one in prison, reading this book would certainly offer you a lot of information that's very useful, and just the idea that you're not alone. I think that that's a really important message to take away. And I think that's one of the things I'd like to really acknowledge and thank Julia for sharing her experience, for putting herself out there and letting people know that they're not alone. So Julia, were you married to Les during this period of time?
Good question. Les came along later, yeah, he came along later, and probably, let me see, at least probably halfway into my brother's incarceration, about 7 years after he was incarcerated. So I pretty much visited by myself, and then Les came with me.
And we all know how wonderful and supportive Les is.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Les's image to see if he's smiling while I say that, but it is true. So you couldn't have chosen a better partner for going through such an ordeal. And kudos to Les as well for his support in your writing this book and all the work that you've been doing to support friends and family of incarcerated people during this process. Do you want to talk a little bit about that at this point? About your extended work
Sure.
that led to this book? Yeah.
Well, when I moved to Vegas, it was I don't know, maybe a year after my brother was incarcerated, and I saw an ad in the paper. That's when people still put ads in the paper. And there was a group, and I went to it. And Friends and Family of Incarcerated Persons is a support group that was run by a couple of ladies who had sons that were incarcerated, and they would have weekly meetings. So I went to the meeting. I would go, sporadically over the years. And it really was a great place where I could go and talk to people who understood, because even though I had spoken to friends and told them, they hadn't been through it, so they gave me the best support they could, but being around people that actually had somebody that was incarcerated, and to learn from them, I learned a lot from them, and that's where I picked up a lot of things I didn't know. Like what is lockdown, and that means you can't visit, and all these other things, how to, send money, how much should you send? And not that anybody can tell you, it's up to each person, but, we discuss things like that. So it was just really, really helpful to be around people. And then a couple years ago, the ladies that were running it were not able to run it anymore. So I just thought it was so important, especially I had started this journey with Prison: The Hidden Sentence with my podcast and blog, because I thought it was so important to get the word out. So that was, and I started speaking. That's when I met Keith. So speaking, doing the podcast, interviewing people so they could tell their stories. And since I had a voice, I thought it would be a good place to help other people. So Friends and Family of Incarcerated Persons is a group here locally in Vegas, and we also partner with some other groups that some of those people are on the line. And we have online support meetings, we have webinars, we go to a conference every year, the International Prisoners Family Conference. I'm a keynote at that, and we just work on being a platform and a place where people can go to talk with others and get support. And we do a holiday party at the end of the year. This year, we're not going to be in person, but we're going to find some families who have like a breadwinner or somebody that's incarcerated, and provide a meal and toys for the kids. So that's another thing I do. And I learned a lot from this group and other groups of what I put into the book. Things personal and things from interviewing people and just going to meetings and hearing what other people are going through. And what's important, all the things that people didn't know. I mean, it's amazing when people get on a support call and they find out, that they need to fill out a power of attorney or a HIPAA form so they can get information about their loved one. Who knew that? So these are the kind of things you learn in the support group, and that's the kind of stuff that's in the book.
Yeah, excellent. I'd like to take this opportunity to let Julia know about all the outpouring of support and really encouraging words that are coming through in comments on Facebook and in the chat box as well. So it's not just me that admires Julia so much for what she's done. It's many people. So Julia, you mentioned briefly your parents and their reaction to this. Would you like to go into that just a little bit more right now?
Yeah, I think I put it in the book. I'm not sure. I'll tell. The first visit, my parents came with me. We were so clueless. We got there about 8 o'clock. I think visiting hours started at 9, and there was already a long line outside. It was February. It was chilly out. And my mom has never been in the best of health. So luckily there was a bench so she could sit there, and we waited with everybody else. And And it was our first time there, so we had to be processed. It took a little while. They took our fingerprints, and my parents, my dad was like so mad, and my mom was just so scared, and I was just so clueless. And again, I told you I had worked with the criminal justice system, so I had been in jails before, but I was always there as the, you know, the computer girl, right? You know, so it was a way different mind of thought, and because we felt guilt and shame, the guards, it felt like the guards treated us like we were criminals, like we had done something wrong. It was just so horrible. And then we went in, it was before TSA, right? Where you go through a metal detector. Well, here we had to go through a metal detector that first visit, well, subsequent visits. And then you go into a room and they pat you down, they make you take your shoes off, they go through your hair. And I mean, you just feel like so violated. And yeah. And then you hear a click. You come out, and then we walk down a hall. We hear a click, and then this door opens, and then we walk into this room. It looked like a cafeteria, a high school cafeteria, and then the door just clank. I'll never forget that loud clank. It was like so scary because you're in there. You can't leave. And they tell you where to sit. And so we sat at this long table and waited for my brother to come out. And here he comes in his blue pants and shirt and these like bath slippers that are plastic. And his head was shaved, his hair was real short. And it was just really hard to see him. And I think my mom started crying, and it's just really tough that first time. And then you could go outside, right? Because you're sitting in this like cafeteria type place. And then we went outside, and there was a wedding. And we were like, it happened to be Valentine's Day, our first visit of all days, right? And there's a wedding, and we're thinking, this is crazy. Why would anybody get married? And I have some of that in the book, that because of course they're people. You forget, people in prison are people, and they fall in love, and there's marriages, right? People get married. You don't know what the circumstances were before, so we don't judge. But there's a wedding, and we were just like in disbelief, like. And then there's families sitting there, and the kids were playing, and people were laughing. And we were just so like shocked, like how could people be laughing and having fun and getting married and all of this stuff. And I learned in subsequent visits that's healthy. It's healthy to keep the prison family together, because someday they're going to be together on the outside. And then after that was the only time my parents visited my brother. And that's why I said all the subsequent visits up until last was just me. And
So it was very hard on your parents.
yeah, I was going to say they never went back. And my dad actually disowned my brother. He just wouldn't have anything to do with him. So my mother would write to him, and he'd call them once a month. They would send him a little bit of money, and that's how it was until he passed. It breaks families apart, you know, like Keith said earlier, you know, with his uncle that nobody visited. So you got to remember that when somebody's incarcerated, they're going to come home someday. So any kind of contact, anything that you can do to keep people on the outside healthy, to support people on the inside, it's good for society.
And having that connection helps to keep people from a return visit as well. So to those of you who are just now tuning in, we are talking about Prison, the Hidden Sentence, and we're here with author Julia Lazarick. This book is available on Amazon. It's trending very well right now. A number of people who have visited us on the chat box have gone in and purchased it. And those of you who did purchase it, thank you very much. And those of you who are viewing us right now, if you'd like to make a comment, you may make a comment. If you're on Facebook, just go to the comment section. If you have a question, you can go to comments on Facebook. You can go to the chat box on Zoom, and we will try our best to get to those questions. Again, Prison, the Hidden Sentence. It is available on Amazon Books right now. And we are talking with the author, Julia Lazarick. Julia.
Thanks. Are we ready to move on to another long-term friend and get some more information about how messed up I was?
Yes, let's do it.
So I know I say that half in jest, half it's real, just really to show what's happening to people on the outside. And like I said earlier, my situation was just that my brother was incarcerated, and that was really painful. But people everywhere have something. So we just need to be more compassionate with each other, no matter what anybody's going through. And I think that's important. And we got to remember that, especially in these times. And is Bonnie out there?
I'm here.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
Yeah, Bonnie's a long-term friend. We worked together for many years. I was her roommate, and she knew my brother, and so Bonnie's going to talk a little bit about me as a roommate and my brother and my brother Bo. And so, Bonnie, do you want to just come on and share some information, and also you can pretty much share how I was.
Okay.
Well,
first of all, Julia, congratulations on a successful book and a very successful book launch. You've touched everybody's hearts with your open and honest communication. So in Julia's book, she starts off the book by talking about her brother and his arrest and the timeline. And she says that her brother was her first roommate when she bought her first home, but I came along before that. My first home that I bought, Julia was my first roommate.
Mhm.
And so I've known Julia for over 30 years. And I remember Bo would come over, he would visit, he would stay for dinner. Sometimes he'd spend the night on the couch. He had a great smile, and Lisa mentioned the great smile too. He was a happy person. He had a successful job. He was always interacting with other people. And he was in sales. That was his profession. He sold things to strangers. And so he was very good at working with people. So Julia was my roommate for close to 2 years before she purchased her own house. And we became very close friends. And he was, like I said, would come and stay at our house. And when she bought her house, it was only about 20 miles away. But it seemed like a really long distance back then. We kept in touch, but it wasn't like when she was my roommate. We used to have parties, and with all of our friends, we called them B parties, because everything had to be something that started with a B, because her last name at the time started with a B, and my first name started with a B. So we'd have B parties, and we had friends named Brian or Bobby or whatever, and so they could come, but anybody else that had to come, they had to change their name to start with a B. Do you remember that?
yeah.
And I was renovating my house, so I'd have a party about every 2 or 3 months, and that motivated me to do all of this remodeling, because I had to get stuff done in between these parties, because people would say something about a project that I had started at the last party, so I had to have it done. And we were always having dinner together, doing things together, and we just really became good friends. But when she moved, we kept in touch, but it wasn't like when she was my roommate. And it was several years after Bo was arrested and incarcerated that she even told me about his situation. And I was shocked at first. Honestly, it was hard to believe that he could have possibly done anything that would have gotten him arrested and incarcerated. And honestly, my first reaction was to pull away from our relationship because I did what everybody does and they associate the family with the crime, which isn't the right thing to do. But I love Julia. And so I brushed those feelings aside. She was my dear friend. I just couldn't do that to her. But eventually, as she mentions in her book, she sold her house and she moved out of state to be near her parents because that was important to her. And thinking back to those times, I really felt like I didn't know how to be a good friend to her because I didn't understand. And in her book, she talks about how her and her parents felt when they were in the courtroom during the trial. She felt the prosecutors were looking at them like they did the crime, and that she and her parents had no part of that. But they were guilty by association. And as Julia points out, it's not fair and it's not right. I knew that Julia needed my support during the worst time in her life. And I was only there partially for her. I mean, she talks about not being there for us, but I honestly was only partially there for her. Now that I've read her book and I understand how lost and sad she felt during that time, I feel terrible that I was not more present for her than I could have been. Her book really opened my eyes to the pain and suffering of family and friends of arrested and incarcerated people. And the book, Prison, the Hidden Sentence, is more than a book title. For many people, it is their way of life. If you have a loved one in prison, you truly are serving that hidden sentence. And you don't realize that until somebody says it out loud, like Julia did in her book. And then you realize, wow, I'm in that situation, or somebody I know is in that situation, and I can do better. So, you know, they say you don't know what you don't know, but sometimes when you know, you still don't grasp the severity of that hidden sentence until it either happens to you, or you read her book, or somebody just says it to you straight away. If I could go back in time, I would change the way I would reacted when Julia finally told me about her brother. When we talked on the phone, we would, you know, she stayed at my house when she was arranging visits for Bo. She stayed at Terry's house. She mentioned that there were a couple of people who she visited with. And when we were arranging that visit or just catching up, we didn't really talk about him or how she felt. But if I had this opportunity to go back in time, I would react completely different because of your book, Julia. And I apologize for not being there for you when I could have been.
No, you were there. You were there. You was exactly what I needed at the time. It's a two-way
Well, thank
street.
you. Anyway, in her book, she does talk about how difficult it was to schedule visits with your loved one. And she talked about how hard it was and how important it is to be flexible in your plans. The PRISM system will move your loved one from one prison to another and not even tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was so expensive for her to come visit her brother, she would try to save money by flying into a major airport near me or near Terry, and then drive to the prison where Bo was being held. Sometimes she would stay one night, and other times, due to a last-minute change in visitation, she'd stay 2 nights, which lucky me, I got her for 2 nights. You know? But she describes how inflexible the guards are, how quickly things change, depending on what's going on in the prison. It just completely changes the visitation process, and you need to be prepared for that. Sometimes Bo was in a nearby prison, and other times he was further away from my house, and Julia couldn't combine a visit with me and her brother in the same trip. And in her book, she talks about a friend's experience when they entered the prison system. Her friend said it was like pulling a curtain back on another universe. I just can't imagine pulling the curtain back on another universe. That's just crazy. And I accompanied Julia to some of her public events where she was speaking about what it was like to have a loved one in prison or prison reform or other related topics. And when I think about that new universe, I imagine that that universe is harsh. It's filled with new people, new scenery, and worst of all, new rules. Rules that are strict, inflexible, and very unfair to the prisoners and their family. Julia was at my house several times for visits, but she happened to be at my house for the visit after 15 years in prison. Bo succumbed to his illness. He did his civic duty of serving his life in prison, and I just can't imagine Julia's grief of planning to see him only to find out that he passed the day before her visit. I helped her plan Bo's funeral. Along with a few other close friends, we helped her scatter his ashes in the lake. She talks about that in her book. We reminisced about the younger and the happier Bo. And then we all went back to our normal busy lives as typical after a funeral. And it's just so easy to move forward when it's not your loved one that's passed. But after reading Julia's book, I realized the importance of her advice to help deal with your loved one's arrest and their incarceration, and sadly in her case, his death while in prison. Julia provides such solid, real advice to help you and your family deal with this terrible situation. And I'm so proud of her for finding her voice and having the courage to write this book. And I truly hope that it helps you if you happen to be in a similar situation to Julia and her parents. So I thank you for your support for Julia, and I thank you, Julia, for sharing your sad but very courageous journey.
Thank you, Bonnie. That was so beautiful and heartfelt, and you touched on so much that, you just touched on so much.
Thank you. You have been a huge inspiration in my life. And I've known you since you got married to Les, and he's been a big influence on my life. I have all these energy efficient light bulbs in my house because of his passion of energy conservation. And I know you talk about your net zero energy home. And so both of you have your passions and you both support each other. And that is so important to your life. You're moving on and you're healing and helping other people deal with their situations and learn to heal. So thank you, Julia.
Well, thank you. That's my goal. Just for every person that it reaches, every person that it helps is why I need to do this. If I need to be the voice, I didn't choose to be the voice, but if that's what it takes and I go out and speak and it helps people, raises awareness, that's the whole reason for the book. The book is going to help so many people. I just know it. I feel it. I read it, and of course, anytime you publish a book, there's always things you want to change, right? But I think all in all, and from the feedback that I've gotten so far, and even from the people that it's helped, and even from friends that have read it, that even though I've spoken about it, that are more aware that when they meet other people, and I know some of my friends have met other people and have been able to help them. So that's more of a pay it forward, that I didn't know what I didn't know back then. We all didn't know, right? We all did the best that we could with what we knew and what we had. But once we have the knowledge, then we can give it forward and help other people. And that's what it's all about. So I thank you. I just thank everybody that's spoken so far. And I'm gonna thank you, Bonnie, and I'm gonna pass it back to Barbara. Because
Thank you, Julia.
Well, thank you for the opportunity
and
to
thank you.
participate in your launch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. That was great. And we've heard from a number of Julia's friends so far, Terry and Bonnie and Lisa. It's just an indication of the sort of friendships that Julia inspires. I've been a friend of Julia's since 2008, and I can say that it's been a very rewarding experience. I'm very proud of what she's done here, and I encourage everybody to buy her book, Prison, the Hidden Sentence, and share this book. Buy it for people that you know. Just knowing that this information is available to you in this book is something that I think can be a great service to any friend of yours. And it's available for sale on Amazon. We've had quite a few people that have written in, that have purchased it, and it is apparently trending very well. And I encourage everyone to go to Amazon Books and purchase Prison, the Hidden Sentence. We're here talking to the author, Julia Lazarick. Thank you very much, Julia. We do have some questions that have been coming in, and I'm going to move one of these questions up to the very top because I know everyone is really quite anxious to talk to Les. And Les was introduced into this process later on, and he's been a great source of support for Julia. And people are interested in hearing what your experience was, Les.
Well, I was just thinking as I was going to be speaking, I was thinking of what Julia told me on our second date. She said to me, I hope you don't have political interest because I may not be the woman for you. You know, and what am I supposed to think when I hear something like that? The journey with Julia has been eye-opening to me, having some experience, never having dealt with someone who was actually convicted of a crime, and thinking of many of the stories she talks about in the book, ones that stand out for me most vividly was my first visit. I think I visited Beau 3 or 4 times before he passed, and in 2 or 3 different cities. And fortunately, Julia prepped me a lot, as she does in the book, about, you know, how to dress, what to expect, you know, going through the process before I could even go, of applying to get an ID before I could go, or to get my picture taken and my handprints taken. So the experience of putting my hand on something and my picture shows up for the guard to look at me was something I had never experienced back then. Making sure my pockets were empty when I walked in, prepping me for I'll be going into a private room and being frisked by a guard. And I think I've heard Julia mention the one that was probably one of the bigger sensations was when the guard opens a door to go in to wait for her brother, the click, the clank, it just seemed to be much louder than I thought. And then one other piece of knowledge that was very useful is you can't just get up and go to the bathroom. This is, you have to plan ahead. And you have to wait for the guards, and it's, I think there was a question about, do the guards make you feel like you're a prisoner? For me, my experiences were, many of the guards seemed like pretty human. And I'm not going to say they were real supportive, but they weren't rude to me. And in one particular incident, the guard was even understanding of how inconsistent the prison system is, or how other guards are. You know, Julia prepped me for inconsistency. One thing you didn't mention to me, Julia, was this roll call. All of a sudden, you're we're talking and there's an announcement and all the prisoners get up and they got to go take roll. Like, it seems so bizarre. Here they are in a locked room with guards at all the doors, and now they want to count them to make sure they're there.
It's called the count. Yeah, the count. Sorry.
Sorry, it made no sense to me at all. It was,
Oh.
and I just recalled that one. But I do recall the transformation with Julia from the time she would buy a ticket to go to getting on the plane on the return flight home. That window of time, whether it was 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, played a real toll on Julia.
Thank you, Les. Thank you for sharing that. This truly is a hidden sentence. It touches everybody in very profound ways, and it's a resonating undertone throughout the book on how it basically hijacks people's lives. So it's interesting to me, Julia, as well, that when you're discussing visitation, the word visitation is both a noun and a verb, and how the language becomes becomes altered. The way that you speak about your activities and the way that it overlays onto your life is, it resonates throughout the book. Would you like to speak about that just a little bit?
About the
visitation and the transformation that you went through, becoming so familiar with this experience.
Yeah, it becomes more familiar, but it's never easier. And I would, even before Les, and it continued, once I'd buy my ticket, I would go into a depression, and I didn't realize it. And I would, but I just wouldn't be taking really good care of myself. And I would just get sad. I mean, I know a part of me would be excited, right, about going to see my brother, but I hated going to prison. I hated going there. And I know that's a strong word, but it was just such a horrible place to go visit. And it was, especially going by myself, but even when Les went with me, like you said, once I purchased the tickets, I'd make my decision to go, purchase the tickets, and then I would just start, getting not present. I think it was more for me just putting up my guard and not feeling, because it was too painful, all of the feelings and everything that I was feeling. So from the time I bought my ticket to getting on the plane to going to see my brother, and it wouldn't be until the last day, like it was a Saturday and Sunday when I could visit. And anybody that's going to visit, you need to find out when the visitation is. Some places you need to make an appointment. But for me, it was on Saturday and Sunday, which I was fortunate because I only had to take one vacation day, maybe 2. So I'd fly out on a Friday, and then Saturday would be okay because I knew that I would see him on Sunday. But then Sunday, and all I could do the whole time I was there is just like hold back, to be strong, right? Be strong, because you don't want your loved one to see you sad, right? Because that would just make them sadder. And you try to be upbeat, and when you're visiting, there's games you can play, cards, and walk around the perimeter. There's things you can do. But on Sunday, when I'd leave, I'd hold it all in until like I walked out the door. And then I just like let it all out. And one time there was this female guard, and I'd seen her there a few times, and I was walking out and I'm crying, and she goes, "Why are you crying?" And I was like, I just looked at her like, like, you don't get it. You don't know what it's like for the family. And I didn't say anything, but it was really tough. And then I think once I got home, it would take a few days, and I'd be okay until I'd get the call. He would call collect, and then it would kind of start again. So it was kind of like a roller coaster, up and down, with living, right, and feeling, and then also being numbing myself, not being present, so that I could handle all of the, everything that I felt. So it really wasn't until, like I said, that he passed, that I really got in touch with my feelings, and I could see how it was affecting me and how I wasn't present.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Julia. A number of people are commenting that they do have the stories that they'd like to share. And Les has put in the chat box the web address that you can go to share your story. We would really love to hear from you. Julia would love to hear from you. And you can imagine that your story will be met with compassion and understanding and support. So we do encourage people to share if you have a story that you'd like to share about your experience with incarceration.
That's how we're going to raise awareness that, one story at a time. And Les, you could even put my email, the PTHS editor one, in there. The website works too.
We are here with Julia Lazarick, the author of Prison: The Hidden Sentence, which is available for purchase on Amazon. We've had a number of people write in that they have purchased the book already, and we're very grateful for that. Yes, thank you very much. It's trending very well. Then once you read the book, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. It's very nicely written, but just packed with useful information. If you or someone you know has ever dealt with incarceration or the jails or prison systems, this is a very useful book. And even if you never have, I think that it's an eye-opening book for people to read, to come to understand this other world that people that have a loved one who is incarcerated are yanked into. It's been referred to as pulling a curtain away from this other world that's present with us, but we're just not aware of it. And Julia was brought into this world when her brother was incarcerated, when Julia was in her 30s, and it basically hijacked her life. And Julia had a very hard time communicating and talking about this. But Julia, would you please share with us how you were able to find your voice?
Thank you. I think it started, not that I think, it did start with the blog, the podcast, where I just thought that I could interview people and get their stories, because I still wasn't ready to talk, right? So I started a podcast where I would interview people so they could tell their stories. And I found that really powerful. And I thought that I needed to do more, that I needed to speak. And I'd been to different meetings, and then the place where Keith heard me speak was just really empowering. It was an opportunity to speak in a safe place with safe people, and I got to tell my story, and it was like really, really powerful. I had mentors there too that were helping me put it together, and I decided that I wanted to speak about it. I had a voice that I didn't really think that anybody understood, or that anybody was really talking about it from the family perspective and how it affects people on the outside. So after that talk, which was several years ago, I had other opportunities to speak, and I took advantage of it. I've spoken, I had an opportunity to speak at the International Prisoners Family Conference. That was my second really big talk several years ago, and it was well received. And I just wanted to keep talking. I mean, I still get nervous when I get out there in front of people because you never know what's going to come out of your mouth. But I had the opportunity to speak in Florida. I've spoken in Texas. And we did a conference here with UNLV and showed a documentary. So I think I kind of tiptoed into the speaking of it and hearing my voice and finding my voice. And it was through the interviewing people on podcasts and also getting to speak at smaller events. And then I joined Toastmasters, and that really helped me a lot. And if this is a good time, I'd like to bring in Gail. Is that a good time, Barb?
Yeah, this is a great time.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce Gail. Gail, do you want to unmute yourself? And if you can't, let me know.
Yeah.
Okay, there's Gail. So let me tell you about Toastmasters. Is, for people that don't know, is a organization where you go and learn public speaking. And there's assignments, and you talk in front of a group, and there's different, 5 minute, 7 minute, 10 minutes talks that you can do. And I walked into a Toastmasters group because I wanted to continue and be a better speaker. And when I walked in, there was a group of people, and I knew that I had found my home because they understood. They had all been through similar or different circumstances, but they felt similar. And I think it was, I don't know if it was my first or second talk, but it was pretty near the beginning. Gail might remember. But I spoke about my brother and incarceration, and Gail heard my story. And I just want to pass it over to Gail. And Gail's been a mentor and a real help in me becoming a better speaker. So Gail, do you want to talk about, do you remember it was the first or second talk I did?
Yeah, I think it was like your second speech or second visit. Yeah. And Julia got to speak, and I'm sitting back listening to her, and she starts talking about her brother. And at a certain point in Julia's story, my mind started to go straight back several years to one night in New York City.
Gail, I think you're breaking up a little bit. Is it my computer or Barbara? Is it breaking up?
I think it might be the microphone or maybe the.
Okay.
Can you?
Yeah, maybe the bandwidth a little bit.
Is there some background noise in your room too?
Could be ceiling fan, you think?
Oh yeah, maybe. Or if you were running anything else on your computer, it could be interfering with your.
No,
broadcast.
let me cut the fan. Let me cut the fan off.
Okay.
Okay. So Gail, let me just tell you guys, Gail is a powerful speaker. When she does her presentations, I just tell you, she's like a powerhouse, and I've just learned so much from her, and I appreciate her coming on to share what she told me about how I affected her, because she's really affected me in good ways too.
Does that sound better? Can you hear me a little better?
That's a little better.
Yeah. Okay, so this one particular night, Julia was telling her story. And I'm sitting back in my seat, just listening to Julia. And at some point in the story, my mind starts to go way back years ago, one night in New York City, when my brother and his girlfriend were outside. Because, in New York, everybody's outside, and there's people everywhere. And as they got into this argument, my brother slapped his girlfriend. And there was a guy standing by, and he pulled out a gun. And as he pulled out the gun, my brother started running, and he's running. And then he runs into this bar, and he happened to run into the kitchen, and there's a guy in the kitchen cutting chicken. My brother snatched the knife out of his hand. And at that point, the guy with the gun came into the bar and he put the gun to my brother's head and he pulled the trigger. But as my brother was running, he was shooting at my brother and the bullets were going through my brother's hair. So when he got in front of my brother in the kitchen of the bar and he pulled the trigger, the gun was empty. So the knife my brother had in his hand, he stabbed the guy and he stabbed him and he stabbed him 32 times. A week later, my brother ended up in court. That night when the police were called, they beat my brother so bad that when he walked into the courtroom, his head was so big and he had so many bruises all over his face. And as the prosecutor made his case, my brother's attorney, which was a legal aid because we didn't have any money, he said absolutely nothing. From what I remember, he didn't say anything. That incident, it stayed with me for many, many, many years. My brother was sent to Dannemora. He was convicted of murder. And he was sent to Dannemora prison. But at that time, my husband had joined the military and we got stationed upstate New York, close to Dannemora. So I had the opportunity to visit him on the weekends. But I could not offer him any support. I had no tools, no support, because I knew nothing about the court system. I knew nothing about prison. I didn't know anything about the law, nothing. So I couldn't help him. A couple of years later, his case was overturned and was thrown out. But I lived with that for so many years. We ended up having orders here to Nevada, and I wanted to take some classes at CSN. So the classes that I took first was computers, and that wasn't it for me. Then I took some accounting, and I said, okay, that's not it. And I decided to take some criminal justice classes. Once I got into criminal justice classes, it just all came down back. But before I got to the criminal justice classes, as I'm sitting in the Toastmasters, in our Toastmasters meeting, and I'm listening to Julia, it hit me. I am living the hidden sentence. That was like huge, because you never know what you're carrying around because of your experiences. So once I took the criminal justice classes, I started learning more about the law and the courts. You know, you don't know a lot about the situations until you get into them with the jail and prison. And at that time, you still don't know a lot. So I just want to say that many people are just they're not bad people. They may make mistakes. People make mistakes. And if we don't have the support to help them to see something different so that they can do better, then, you know, really, what are we to do? So what I want to say is, I want to congratulate Julia for writing this book. But I want to thank Julia for writing this book, because Julia took her voice and she put it on paper so that the whole world can see it and use the tools that's in this book and the suggestions and listen to other people's stories while they hear Julia's story. Many times we are looking at criminal movies or movies with crime, or we'll go to prison to visit our loved ones, and we see things that are wrong with the system, and we don't say anything. So what I want to ask is many of us don't have a lot of money to say fight this system, but we do have a voice. Let your voice be heard. Write your congressman, your councilmen, your governor, your mayors. Write these people. Write them a letter. If you can't write a book, put it in a letter. But in the meantime, go purchase that book, because now you have something to fight with. You have some tools and you have some support. So use your voice, go get that book, and let's help change the law. Let's change the laws here. Thank you for giving me this time.
Oh, thank you, Gail. I appreciate you so much. And it was just so moving when you told me, you know, how my talk when I was just starting at Toastmasters impacted you. And it really gave me the courage to continue to keep talking about it. And it also gave me the what am I looking for? The knowing that this is what I need to do and that it's right. Because, you know, creating a platform for people, you know, letting people talk about it, having people have tools so they know what to do. Again, I just want to go back to, no, this is not legal advice. This is just based on my experience. So I just want to make that clear. But yeah, talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, find your voice. And that's what Barbara had asked me about. And that's how I found my voice. People like Gail, people like Keith, my friends supporting me, my husband, just keep going and talking. And even if I don't know everything, because I was afraid, because I don't know all the statistics. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a you know, a statistician or a researcher, but I've experienced and I've spoken to a lot of people and I have a lot of feedback. And that's what that's what's in my book. So I thank you, Gail, very much.
Thank you.
You're awesome. And I wanted to bring in Annette. Annette, are you out there?
Yes, I am.
So hi.
Hello, everyone.
Annette's another friend, longtime friend, and we were friends for at least 10 years before I started speaking about it. And I don't know exactly the moment that we spoke about it, Annette, maybe you remember, but we found out that we each had somebody that was incarcerated. And for 10 years, we didn't talk about it. All that time, we could have been supporting each other. We could have been helping each other. We could have been sharing information, but no, we didn't talk about it. So this is another example of the hidden sentence. And Annette, if you want to just talk about what you remember of our conversation that first time and, you know, before that, how we didn't talk about it.
Thank you, Julia. And the speakers so far have just been amazing. And a lot of the things I'm hearing are notes that I have made, and my sentiments have been expressed here already in different ways by different people. So I think there's definitely a message coming through here and a strength. I don't remember, I think we met back in about 2005, and it was several years before you even mentioned anything with your brother. I was really surprised. I didn't know anything about your brother or any of the experiences that you had gone through and were going through. I think that I really understood because I had a daughter that was incarcerated, and I didn't talk about it. And I didn't talk about her, and it was just a part of our life that kind of we accepted. And like Gail said, I think that I realized there is another hidden sentence, and there is another experience that people go through together. So here we were, two very close. I mean, I consider Julia a very close and personal friend. And here we were, two very close friends that had never brought this up. and we're going through this really emotional time, and we never talked about it. So this is real, and it happens to so many people. I did make a few notes here. I want to say my heart goes out to you, Julia, because I know it was probably very difficult. I don't know, but I believe it would have been very difficult to write this book. But it was so important for so many reasons. And I think what I'm hearing today, it just continues to validate that. I would like to thank you for being a friend.
Yeah.
And listening to me and understanding. I'm sorry.
That's why we're here to support
really
each other.
For the strength and the courage that you had to write this book. Let me just gather myself for a second, because it is an emotional thing for me, as I think everyone understands. In reading the book, I actually learned more details about your experience than I had known or you had ever talked about. Some of those things I had never knew. But what was really amazed me was how similar they were to my experience. It was extraordinarily similar, and I was thinking, because it was a different state, right? And it was very, very similar. So, and what I really liked about what you wrote in the book is how you tied the stories together with the summaries at the end. Is here's what I learned and here's a list. So it was like a handbook, but not a step-by-step instruction book. It gives the meaning behind why you're explaining, and we've talked about the valuable and helpful information that you shared. I think you did an excellent job of how you tied that all together. The information and the summaries, I think, are going to be extremely valuable. And like others have said, I wish I would have had this information years ago. One of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about, we've mentioned visitation. I think that's probably one of the hardest things. One experience I had, and also it's funny how you talk about the clank, because when we were brought in, we waited in the lobby, we had to hand over our licenses. And then we would go through the metal detection and pull the pockets out and pat it down. But we were led into, then beyond the lobby was an area. We went through an iron gate, and when all the visitors were in, it was kind of a lobby area, kind of a holding area. And when all the visitors had gone through, that iron gate closed behind us, and it clanked so loud. And there was another gate beyond that. Mm-hmm. So we just stood there and in silence, stood there very quietly, and then the other gate would open, and then, like you said, that would close behind you. I believe that at that moment, and maybe I look back on it now, we were a part of the prison system. There is no breaking the rules. You follow everything that they tell you to do, and there are a lot of rules. The one time we couldn't wear blue because the inmates wore blue. So I wore a bright turquoise shirt, and again, you know, we had to drive a distance, not out of state, but you know, we planned for these visits, and I wore bright blue, bright turquoise, and I was not allowed to visit my daughter because it was considered blue, and so the guard that day wouldn't let me visit. So you know, that was difficult, and like some of the things I've heard that you've recommended is, you know, take extra clothes. There's just so many things, little things and details that you have brought to light about the tactical things to do. And I really do think it's very helpful. But the way you presented it in the story and the messaging, also, as others have testified here today, it just tells you the emotional side of the story, and a message that needs to raise awareness, because there is another world, and there's so many people affected by this. I know you wrote your personal story, but it is the story of many.
Yep.
I don't know, I've got so many little notes about things I wanted to say, but you know, I know that this has been a very meaningful and productive discussion. So I did want to say also that you did an excellent job of capturing your personal story, and sharing it is really going to help others, just like this launch itself and the communication is really helping others. I would also like to say my daughter is doing fantastic. I believe she's on the call. She did community service for Julia, and Julie helped her along the way as well. She has 3 beautiful children, and she has a very good life. So we're very happy, and there is hope. And I'm glad there's a sun and the sunshine in your logo, because there is hope. But you know, I really just want to say also, the book is not just for family and friends of incarcerated persons. This book is to be shared with the world, and it should be given to others, and I hope it's promoted so that everyone can have a peek into the world of people that are serving the hidden sentence.
I appreciate it, and well said. And I just appreciate that, you know, all the different parts of the book, because we didn't go through everything. We didn't go through all the details of visitation, which, you know, you and I know, you know, what to wear, right? Like wearing blue, and if that's the color that the inmates are wearing, or bringing extra clothes if you drive, or like you have to bring a clear bag. You can only bring so much money. You can only bring so much in. You know, the count, right? That I forgot to tell Les about, you know, and then if the prison's in lockdown and you go, right? Nobody tells you, you go there and you show up and they're like, nope, sorry, prison's in lockdown. And what if you traveled hundreds of miles? You know, that's happened to me once. And
just the simple thing is going and getting the cards and the games as soon as you go in.
Oh,
So
yeah,
important.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
important.
that's what we learned. Get your food and your games as soon as you get there, because there won't be any when everybody gets there. But
Exactly.
bring out, there is no visitation right now in Nevada. New York has opened up visitation. Some, I think like 9 other states have. But right now, since February, people haven't been able to see their loved ones. And so it's a really, really traumatic time right now for everybody. And that's why with FIP, with the Friends and Family of Incarcerated Persons, we're doing more online support. I just wanted to bring that out, because I don't know if people know that. So at least you're walking away with something you didn't know. But yeah, just those little things that it's just so good to know in advance, and that you can have family time when you visit, which sounded really, really weird to me at first. And could you tell them about the application? Because I heard something earlier, and it is in the book, but this is how strict it is when I'm saying that it takes months sometimes.
Yeah, so we filled out the application to visit, and it was a written application. It took a while to get the application. You have to fill it out and, you know, completely fill it out. And we returned the application. We didn't hear anything for several weeks, and I think I got a letter finally. It says your application has been rejected, and it didn't even really tell me what. And I went, oh boy. So I called them and I asked them, you know, why was my application rejected? And they said, well, because I don't have a middle name, so I just left it blank on the application. So she said, well, if you don't have a middle name, you have to put no middle initial or no middle name, and you have to put that in. So I had to reapply and go through the process, wait for to get the application again, and then resubmit it, and then wait several weeks for it to be approved. And just one more thing I want to say, I think I talked about this to you in one of our interviews or discussions, is there is no customer service when it comes to incarceration in the prison system. There really is no one to help you. There are ways to get information, but there isn't a department that is there that's in the prison system. So you do need to find the resources and the people that can help you and support you. And it's a great job you're doing.
Thank you. I would love to do that, to have that. That would be like awesome to put that together so that people had a resource on there. And that would be awesome. But I thank you so much. Again, this is just such a prime example of the hidden sentence. Good friends that don't even talk about it because it's so hidden, and it shouldn't be. You should be able to talk about it. And that's my message. And I want to keep talking about it. I would like to keep telling people stories, interviewing people. You know, if there's any opportunities for me to speak, to interview, to do radio, to be a guest on any shows anywhere in the world, I would just love to continue the sharing stories, talking about it, creating awareness, and letting people know what's going on. And there's so many stories out there. As Barbara said, there's some people that want to talk and tell their stories. The podcast is called Prison: The Hidden Sentence. Also, I just, when I came up with that title, I just thought it's so apropos once I realized that I was living a hidden sentence. And the goal for this launch was to bring in people that have witnessed that have lived it, that have seen it with me. And like Annette said, I'm just a representative of millions of other people going through this. This isn't just my story. This is a story of other people that are going through it, no matter what state you're in. Like Annette said, we had similar circumstances. And I know there's some people on the line here that I've spoken to, that I've interviewed, that have come into our support groups, that have experienced the same things. And you're not alone. And this book is going to represent that. The book will not only show you that you're not alone, but it will show you that what you're going through is what other people go through. And it will also provide ways that you can take care of yourself, things that I've learned, things that other people have done, so that you can take care of yourself and stay healthy and not get depressed. Like I said, when I would go visit my brother, one time I got the plane ticket to when I came home, I wasn't living my life. I was depressed and stuffing myself, just comfort food, right? So it's just really important that we all take care of ourselves. So thank you, Annette. I really appreciate you. I appreciate everybody that's spoken. And I'm going to turn it back over to Barbara if there's questions out there for the remainder of the event.
We do have a few questions. I'd like to also thank Gail and Annette for sharing their truly personal stories. Those stories really resonate and reflect this shared experience that Julie has been talking about. It's the story of people whose lives have been altered so significantly by this experience of incarceration of a loved one. Now, there was someone who had a question. It was a very practical nature, and I would urge those kinds of questions that are more specific to please get in touch with Julia directly. Les, if you could put Julia's email up again, and Julia is here to support the community of people, friends and families of incarcerated persons. She's here to support you. And it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, Julia. The book is really great. If you haven't already purchased it, I urge you to go to Amazon and purchase it now, and then go back and write a review, because I think you'll really enjoy this book. It's filled with practical information and moving anecdotes. And Julia does a wonderful job of painting a picture of what her life was like and who her brother was prior to the incarceration, and how things altered for all of them once this incarceration took place. So Julia's had some great friends come on, Lisa and Terry, and just to illustrate the importance of good support system for you. And then Annette and Gail shared their profoundly moving stories about their personal experience with the legal system when one of their loved ones had to deal with it. So Judy, one of our tech support people that's working in the background here, had a great suggestion. She suggested to buy a copy for your local library, because yes, this way you don't have to wait for Amazon in a pinch. You can go to your local library and check out a copy while you're waiting for your copy to arrive. So I really liked that. And when you do go to Amazon and you do purchase the book, maybe we suggest that you also hit Amazon Smile. And then when that's an opportunity for you to donate to various causes. But if you want to donate, then you just select friends and family of incarcerated persons. So that would be an opportunity to spread. Oh, there's Judy. Judy, did you want to say anything?
Idea. Someone suggested it on Facebook, but it was a good idea. So.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't your idea. Okay, well.
I'm more clever than I am. So, but yeah.
No, kudos to you for not taking credit for such a great idea. So whoever suggested that idea, thank you very much. It was a great idea. So we did have a question come in that I thought was a great question for you, Julia, because it kind of brings us to where we're at now. So tell me, are you feeling optimistic about the current state of the prison system?
You know, that's a really good question, and I do not feel very optimistic about it until we raise awareness. Because right now what's going on in the prisons with COVID and people not being able to see their loved ones, that people that are incarcerated aren't getting the training, the education, the visitation, the human touch, seeing loved ones, they're not getting any of that. So I know that the prisons are doing the best they can, you know, right now with trying not to have a rampant outbreak of COVID. However, the prisons are in lockdown, so it's a really horrible time right now for everybody. And it's going to take, I think it's going to take education, awareness, and more people involved with knowing what's going on in the prison system and seeing that when somebody's incarcerated, they're not in there alone. There's a whole community behind them that's incarcerated on the outside, and that it affects everybody on the outside. So until we start rehabilitating people that are incarcerated, I mean, there's a large percentage of people in there for drug addiction, right? For alcoholism, for addictions that can be rehabilitated, because a lot of the crimes are done when somebody is under the influence. And I just want to go on the record for saying, I'm not ever saying that people shouldn't be incarcerated. However, I think there's a smarter way to do it that will help families. Because if you have somebody that is addicted, right, that has an addiction, and they come out, there's a lot of recidivism, and there's a lot of families then that have to have this tough love. Like, when do you stop? You know, when somebody, especially if is going in and out of prison, I mean, there has to be a point where you practice tough love. And this isn't my personal opinion as much as speaking to other people that have been through it. And also there's a lot of mental illness. I mean, officers are not trained. I don't mean to make a blanket statement. A lot of times if somebody is having a mental episode, right, an officer might not know, and there has to be ways to deal with and help people that have mental illnesses that are incarcerated. So if you look at the people that are incarcerated, and I don't know the percentages, but there's a lot that have addictions, a lot that have mental illnesses. And I think that if we can come up with rehabilitative ways to help them that will reduce incarceration, and then I think we have hope.
Thank you. Very well said. So, Julia, one of the things that you touch on and that I'd like you to talk a little bit more about is how did you take care of yourself? And what was that journey like?
Well, I didn't. I didn't for the 15 years. But I think after, you know, I did try going to speak to a therapist, and what I ended up doing was educating her on incarceration in the prison system. So you know, that didn't work. I did when I have to take it back. I did start hiking. Uh, I did, for me to take care of myself, it was really organizing things and being with other people and helping other people. So I started hiking. I started a hiking group. We would go hiking all the time. And that I think was helpful. And then, doing yoga and taking some classes on speaking and finding my voice. So it really wasn't until my brother passed that I started taking care of myself, I'd say. So and that's another reason for the book, because I want people to take care of themselves when they're going through it, not after it's too late.
Yeah, well said. So your brother passed while he was in prison. And those of you who are just joining us for these last few minutes, we are talking to Julia Lazarick about her new book that just came out on Amazon. It's called Prison, the Hidden Sentence. And I do encourage you to go there and read it and purchase it and read it and then review it in that order. But it is a great read. It's an easy book to read because Julia did a great job of writing this book in a way that it's very personal and compelling. And when I finished reading this book, I realized the practical knowledge that's contained in this book is something that we can all benefit from. None of us ever expect to be in this situation. And it is such a foreign environment that Julia opens us up to, that you can really appreciate how much practical information is needed in order to navigate a situation like Julia went through. And writing this book has been a great service to Julia. She's worked very hard on it. It's been something that she's been working on for a long time. And after I think it really does speak well of Julia that she's turned such a painful experience into something that is so helpful for others. And Julia also works with friends and family of incarcerated people. So that's another thing that she's really invested a lot of time in. Let's see, do we have any? So there's some comments here.
If there's any questions?
Yeah, we have some comments here. Officers receive little or no training in mental health issues. And great comment, Neela. I would have done anything for a book like this when my husband first went to prison. This is going to help so many people. And it's true. There's, as far as I can tell, there is nothing quite like this book out there. So Julia, you've talked a lot about the process of writing the book. You've also talked about the painful experience of your brother being incarcerated in the trial and the visitation. One thing that I was really profoundly struck by was not only the use of the word visitation as both a noun and a verb, but also the way that the word treat changed meaning for people in prison, that the simplest things are a treat for people who are in prison. Could you broaden our experience on that, please?
I think you're talking about the food, right?
Yes, there was food. There was, I think letters were treats. Talk about that and sort of how they have like reward systems for people who are in prison.
Well, like for my brother and me, like food time was always special. Like we would cook dinner together, we'd get special food, and we liked Munchos. That was like one of our snacks that we liked. So when I would visit him, after the first time when we didn't know to buy all the food when we first got there. So in subsequent visits, as soon as I got in there, I would go to the vending machines and I would get everything that I knew that he liked, and we'd get Munchos and it's vendor food, right? But the burgers and chicken things and I don't know, just chocolate and soda, just all these things that he wouldn't normally get. So it was a real treat, and it felt really good that I could get that, when we were all together. And so he'd come out and I'd have like a pile of food there. He'd, have a big smile, and then we'd walk over to the microwave and cook it and sit down and eat together. So it was a real treat. And just a little thing to know, they're not allowed to touch money. So the whole time he was incarcerated, he'd never touched money. So I had to buy everything. He couldn't even go to the vending machine. I had to do it. So that was a treat. I'm trying to think of other treats, like on his birthday, I would send him extra money, and on the holidays, so he could buy himself, we'll say, treats. In the commissary, there were certain things, if they had money, that they could buy. So he could buy certain foods to supplement what he was getting in the prison. He could buy shoes, sneakers, right? Instead of they give them those like water sandals, but he could buy sneakers. He could buy a sweatshirt. In the winter, it would be cold. He could buy a sweat jacket. There's things that they're not given, certain things to take care of themselves, certain maybe extra soap, shampoo, combs. I mean, they're just really given the basics in there. So by sending extra money, and I was told not to send too much money. I might have broken that rule once. I learned that after. But, there's certain things, and you call it treats. They can buy a little TV. There's certain things they can buy that really, really make their lives easier. And it just made me feel good when I could do that. On the other hand, is when they were moved to another facility, or if their room got searched, things could come out missing. So there were some things that he had to buy over and over again. So in his situation, my parents were sending him a little bit of money. I would send him what I could. So he was in a position where he could have these little extra things. But there's tons of people in there that don't have family, or their family doesn't have money, and they're just living on the basics. The other thing I would do is send him magazines and books, and and then they would share it. So that was something that was really, really good, and that would be a treat. He'd tell me what kind of magazines he'd want, and then if the pictures were risque, right? I mean, we couldn't call it risque, but sometimes there'd be like pages torn out. I'd send him pictures. So I think those kind of things are treats to him, because figure when you're inside day after day, same thing, same wall, same everything, it's a regiment. And so anything that you can do to provide them with a little extra, I think, is a treat. And then the other thing to remember is that when they come home, that they've been doing this regiment, whether it's 5 weeks, 5 years, 20 years, whatever it is. So when they come home, it's going to take them a while to get readjusted to society. And I've spoken to several people that have been released, and it's really, it takes a while to get adjusted. And that's why I think it's important for this. My next thing is family reentry, preparing the family. I think that's going to be really important. But I think this book is going to be so helpful. I really want everybody to read it, because it's just filled with so much good information. And I'm not just saying it because I wrote it. I really kind of waited to get some feedback from people, and all the feedback that I've gotten, and I made people like swear that they're telling me the truth. Just the things they've told me about the book and how it's helped them and opened their eyes, and especially what like some people said here, and I wish I had it, that people have it before. And that's why it's important for people to read it, because if you have the information before, that when it happens, that you're prepared, or at least you have some information, or you could help somebody else. I just think that's important. And
That's very true. And having this book is a great resource of information. We do have a couple of questions that I wanted to address that Julia can't actually answer right now. And I've been chatting with our tech person about this, whether or not the book is available in Spanish. And that is something we're going to have to get back to you on in terms of how easy it would be to translate it
Yeah, let's do it.
from the, okay, so Julia's making a note here. Thank you, Julia. Yes. So people who have no friends or family that are willing to support them, they don't get any treats in prison, do they? That sounds like a pretty bleak experience. Speaking of someone who is addicted to chocolate.
Yeah, I think that could cause problems in prison too, right? Because if you don't have anything, what have you got to lose?
You're right.
That's just my 2 cents. That didn't come from anywhere else.
Right. Yeah. So once again, we're here talking to Julia Lazarick, the author of Prison: The Hidden Sentence, which is available for sale on Amazon. And when you do go to buy it, if you just want to click on Amazon Smile, then you can also support the a program called Friends and Family of Incarcerated People. It's something that Julia is also involved in. You want to talk just a little bit about that before, I know we are running out of time here, but.
Yeah, well, it's really, I really was focusing on Prison: The Hidden Sentence with my podcast and blog and reaching an international audience. And I found that really rewarding. However, when FIP, which is Friends and Family of Incarcerated Persons, FIP needed some assistance when the people running it weren't able to, it just helped me so much in the early years. And it's a 20-year-old nonprofit. I just really wanted to keep it going. And in the book, I do talk about support and finding support groups. And this is one. It's really uncanny. Maybe uncanny is not the word, but I find it weird that there aren't more support groups across the United States. There's a couple of groups that I know of. We have them on the resources, but you think that every state would have support groups, and I've got people calling in from all over the United States because they don't have support in their area. So one of the good things about COVID, right, is about the pandemic is that we are online. So we're getting to serve people all over the United States. Before we had local support meetings, but now we can have people from anywhere calling in and supporting each other. And like we said earlier, people, no matter where they are, they're experiencing the same things. And that's why, like in the book, I do bring out support and how important that is. And FIP is just one of the support groups that's out there. But I would like to see support groups all over that people can get together and talk and support each other. And also, you know, the big hairy goal is to have a family services in the court, to have a family services office, so people have somewhere to go to get information. But that's
as Gail referred to, or no, Annette referred to customer service.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
And I liked how she said all the testimonies, like, which I think was pretty apropos for what we're doing. So I don't know, the last few minutes, is there anybody that has any questions? Anybody that wants to come off mute, or anything that anybody wants to say?
Well, I stand corrected. It is Friends and Family of Incarcerated Persons, not people.
Yeah. No, they're people too.
Yeah, okay.
But I just really appreciate everybody hanging in there. And I know, I want to say I hope, I know that whoever listened walked away with some new knowledge. Even if you had somebody in the system, even if you've been incarcerated yourself, I know that there's something that you heard here today that you didn't know. And I thought it was really important to include other people, because if I was talking the whole time, I think it would be pretty boring, you know? And so bringing in people that can prove what was written in the book, like real life stories of how it affects people, you know, my own personal experience of how not present, how depressed, how I was for all those years. And it's bringing out again, it is my story, but I represent so many other people, and I want to hear everybody's stories. And like I said, if I would love to be able to do a radio show, something where we can keep this conversation going. And I'm open to any opportunities like that to keep this going. It's so important. People need to keep talking, keep opening up. Half the stories I do are anonymous. I mean, in the book, you'll see the stories and they're all anonymous. And some of them are a compilation of different people's stories, because there could be people on here that maybe might read the book and say, oh, that's my story. Well, it's a compilation of different people's stories. And, it's just amazing. People don't want to talk about it because, and I don't blame them. Sometimes one of the main reasons is because of their job, or because they're afraid that if they speak out that somehow it's going to affect their loved one. So until everybody's speaking about it, till everybody's speaking out, then there's not going to be change. So we all need to have a voice and speak about it. And I'm going to continue speaking about it. I'm going to continue urging people to purchase the book so that they can learn more, have the knowledge, not feel alone, have a platform, and keep doing what I'm doing. And that's my goal, is to have everybody have a voice. Like Gail said, you got to talk about it. If you want change, you got to talk about it. So I'm complete, Barbara. I thank you so much, and Judy and Les and Gail and Annette and Bonnie and Terry and Lisa and Keith and just everybody for helping to make this a really interesting event. And we made it through 3 hours. We are.
Yes, and we're running out of time now, but thank you to all the people who tuned in, all the people who went online during this broadcast and purchased the book, because that's what we were really trying to drive people to Amazon to purchase the book. And it is trending. Last I heard, it was number 9 in the trends for sales. So thank you so much for helping make that happen. Please go back, write the review, recommend the book to your family, your friends. And if you haven't already purchased it, please do purchase it. Thank you, Julia. Thank you for writing this book.